Hey everybody, welcome back to Shelf Life or Death, and doing something a little different today because I feel like crap, kind of. It's not COVID, but pretty sure getting a nice little head cold going on there. So as you can see, I did not feel like putting much effort into this. It's also a really crappy, rainy, kind of snowy day out, and it's gross, but hey, at least got some Easter chocolate, so thank you, Dad. And my tea, and I'm doing this for the first time on my phone, so we'll see how the sound turns out on that. As you can hear, my voice is also kind of whack, so I hope that gets picked up okay. And the lighting is, I have a nice new ring light, as you can probably see in like my eyes now. So welcome to like a weird new edition of Shelf Life or Death. So what we're going to be talking about today, though, is another used book find. Yay! Because that's my life. And this one picked up totally by spec. I just thought the title was kind of interesting, and this is The Happy Time by Robert Fontaine. And so this is kind of a neat book. And as I paged through it when I found it at whatever the hell book sale I found it at, this is published in 1945, but what grabbed me was that right at the very beginning, it says that the author had lived in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and this book was a bunch of sort of short stories based on his, like, I think 4 or 5 years that he lived in Ottawa between the ages of like 11 and 15. And so, hey, I'm like, all right, so here's like a vintage book about like my own hometown. And because he was writing as like his time from when he was a child, I managed to piece together sort of the rough timeline of this book as being set between 1921 and 1924. So that was based on mention of a player who was popular in the Ottawa Senators at the time, whose career ran from like 21 to 30, 1930 something. And then I narrowed it down even more after they mentioned like a movie that came out in, I think it was in 1920, between 1921 and 1924, or something like that. I think it was like 1923. And it was called The Sheik of Araby. So a silent movie that came out at that point. So looking that up, I kind of pegged the timeline of this book because I think the last story is like he's 14 or 15 years old. So between 1921 and 1924, set in Ottawa. And it's really kind of interesting because it's written with a lot of humor. And this guy, Robert Fontaine, was apparently like quite a popular like newspaper journalist, columnist, writer. Short stories, like he did a lot of stuff, even though I've never heard of him before. And his mother was Scottish, but his father was French Canadian, and conducted orchestras for like vaudeville and sorry, like vaudeville shows, like symphonies, things like that. So he was like very well known conductor composer, and so it's a really like neat frigging picture of like life in Ottawa, like at that point in time, and also from like a mixed household, like Scottish, French, Canadian point in time as well too, because at that point, like there were a lot of immigrants coming to Ottawa, you know, like mostly it was like mostly Irish people who built the Rideau Canal, and there was a lot of tragic deaths involved with that as well too. Humorous, like when I was a kid, I had a crush on, you know, this teacher, and like I got into these scrapes, and in one story his dad takes him to like a baseball game in Hull, and like I didn't even know Hull had a baseball team in like the 1920s, and so you kind of get a little bit of a look at what like it was like in Hull as well too. And let me just tell you that it was the exact same, 100% ratchet, same as it is now, same. Some things don't change. So like one thing that I kind of took with a grain of salt, like I'm not a religious person, but like, you know, in 1924, you're French Canadian, like you're religious, right? So it was very Catholic. So there is a lot of talk of like, you know, he like says prayers before bed, and, you know, there's stories with like priests, you know, things like that. Like, you know, ask God what to do kind of thing. But there's also like a lot of jokes about it. So it's not like he's kind of stuffing religion down your throat or anything like that. It just happened to be like much more like of the times kind of thing. Actually, like some super frigging cute like illustrations in this book as well too. Like each story kind of comes with its own like little illustration. So it's like one of the priests like building a church that, you know, the bishop didn't want him to build. So essentially all of the neighbors just kind of get whatever they can to put this thing together and, you know, kind of like screw the church sort of thing. So it's kind of good like that. There's another one sort of like very like, you know, they end up going to a wedding kind of thing, but like it's the worst downpour absolutely ever. And like everything is washed out and they're in the backwoods of Quebec somewhere. It's really cute. A lot of like very coming of age type stuff. You know, like the Robert as a boy like develops, you know, crushes on some older women that, you know, come into the household as like, you know, hired help and that kind of thing. And it's very sweet. And there's not a whole lot of like downer in this book, but there are a couple of stories where you're just kind of like, oh man, that sucks. Like I feel for that kid. But yeah, like all in all, like this, it's really cool. Just to kind of like read about, you know, landmarks and like the place where you live, where like, you know, normally fun comes to die. Sorry, Ottawa, but it's true. And it actually kind of like made me like appreciate my own city more, like if that makes any sense. Yeah, like very cute. There's a lot of like French Canadian slang and stuff in here as well too. So, like if you're not used to hearing that, you know, being spoken or things like that, it might be like a little bit, you know, you read it, you're like, what does that mean? Kind of thing. His two, you know, uncles are like layabout alcoholics. You know, there's one lady who's supposed to be a witch that like lives nearby and they try and like lead her into a trap, you know. So some of it's like probably based on truth, but like, I mean, like some of it is also probably like somewhat exaggerated, you know, things like that. There's this one thing where like his mother sends him to like the store. She's ill, so like sends this little 11-year-old kid to like you know, the local store to buy her like a new nightgown, and he has to go into like the lingerie section and he's like completely mortified. You know, just like it's stuff that would totally resonate with like a little kid today. Such a cool little find, and I'm so glad I found it. The Happy Time. I don't even think I actually said what it was called. But yeah, published 1945, Robert Fontaine, and I've never seen any of his other stuff. And apparently this used to be the property of the patient's library in like, what is it? Mount Hamilton Hospital. So someone stole this from a hospital library, which is like, you must have really liked the book. That's all I can say. Yeah, and so I'm gonna go eat the rest of my chocolate. Maybe not, maybe the rest of my chocolate bunny. We shall see. And process the video, and we'll see how the quality turns out on this. And I've got to figure out, like, I've got to stop looking at the top of the video, because then I'm kind of like not looking at you guys, but you know, it's a process. Like, it's a process. I'm old. I'm learning this shit. Thanks for sticking with, and I'll try and get that little field trip Black Squirrel video together for you guys soon. Thanks very much. Bye.